it in a sentence.
Mac, you ready?
Combination.
Hey, y'all ready? Okay. All right, we're going to bring the meeting to order. We're going to start with the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would all stand, please. Lord, we just want to thank you so much for the amazing opportunities you give us here in this great nation. We just ask that you guide us here tonight. Give us wisdom and discernment and help us to do the right things for the citizens of Walton County. In Christ's name we pray, amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Everybody get a chance to read the minutes from the last meeting? We got any questions about the minutes? Any changes needed, please? All right, how about a motion then?
I make a motion that we approve the February 11th minutes.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion passes. Pass that around. Yeah, read that. Sign it. No, that's the minutes. Okay, we've got a guest speaker here today, Miss Debbie Hurd. Miss Hurd, are you ready?
Can I give you a little background on Miss Debbie and how we met?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, I haven't made it any secret that I'm kind of a environmentalist. I'm a very avid outdoors person. I'm really keen on protecting the natural resources and environment of Walton County, and not just Walton County, but we all could be better stewards of our planet. Anyway, I met Miss Debbie Hurd as a fellow environmentalist, and she got a lot of notoriety on protecting the Doom Lakes down on 30A. And when I came into the realization that a lot of the development that we're having doesn't have the benefit of infrastructure and doesn't have sewage, and that around a lot of our waters are the old school septic tanks that are putting seepage into the bay and tributaries and other waterlands. I reached out to a fellow environmentalist and said, you know, we're approving development with no infrastructure and this whole antiquated septic tank system. Is there anything we can do on it? She said, actually there is. So I asked her to come here and introduce the new, she'll tell you the technical name, the proper name. It's pretty much a hyper environmental friendly septic tank that produces the lowest amount of discharge on the market today. It's the cutting edge of technology. I was surprised to hear how long this technology has been out. She's found a lot of grant money. And Ms. Debbie Hurd, can you take it from here?
Hey, guys. I am chairman of the Coastal Dune Lake Advisory Board. Of course, I'm not here speaking on their behalf because this is not anything we've talked about there. I just want to share with you what we've done and then tell you what I believe can be done to protect the bay like we have protected the Dune Lakes. It's been over a decade ago, Billy McKee called me. I don't even know where he got my name, and said, I need you to be on the Coastal Dune Lake Advisory Board. And he said, if you'll commit to it for 1 year, that's really all I need. Well, it's been a decade now, and I've been on the Dune Lake Board and served as chairman for quite some time. I took a break, and I'm back being chairman. And we did a study in 2018. Jones Edmonds did a study of the Dune Lakes. And I asked at that time for them to identify all of the septic tanks that remained, that were active on the coastal Dune Lakes. We came up with 91 septic tanks that remained in the coastal Dune Lake Protection Zone. Of those, Melinda Gates in Environmental has identified 88 that are actually working and need to be replaced. What we have done through environmental Department, Public Works, and the Dune Lake Board, we've come up with a little less than $1 million in grants and concessions from regional utilities to convert all of those septic tanks to sewer, because sewer is available there. But with the bay, there are lots of areas, especially north of the bay, that we will never get sewer to, ever. It's Choctaw Beach, perfect example. We don't believe we'll ever get sewer that far out. So born from all of this was a private family foundation that I have, Coastal Resource Conservancy. And we have been looking at how to save our bay, basically, which all of our commissioners have run on as their platform, Save the Bay, and what is causing the contamination of the bay. And with the situation that's been brought up about driftwood and stormwater and all of that, it's really hyper-focused on the health of our bay. And it's different areas. Our bay is 30 miles wide, and in some places 6 miles in, width, north and south. So what I have found is in Middle Florida, on up, even west of Tallahassee, are protection areas around springs, and it's a basin management program by the DEP. And if you're within a certain zone, just like we have the Coastal Dune Lake Protection Zone, you must use one of these advanced system septic tanks that filters out all of the nitrogen and the phosphorus. You need a healthy balance of that, but you don't need too much of that, and that causes algae to grow and all kinds of other problems, which we won't get into the science of that. I'm not a scientist. I'm a layman, and I'm somebody who has worked diligently to protect our environment here in Walton County and across the globe with our conservancy through land trust. But years ago, turn of the century, the 1900 century, our bay was what we believe the largest coastal dune lake in the world. And the outfall was the Destin Pass. And the hurricane, shortly after 1900, blew out that pass. Bless you. And sometime when that happened, some guys decided we could dredge that. And if we dredge that, we can make that a shipping channel. And then the Intercoastal Waterway came through, and there was no more dune lake. But we do have a lot of proof that it was a dune lake. And we've been protecting our dune lakes for all these years, but we have not been protecting our bay in the same way as we protected our dune lakes. And we have made great strides. The people that were there before me did a lot, and in the past 10 years, we have really made leaps and bounds, especially with the help of the planning department. They have done a great job, and Mac has been a great support of that, and Kristen as well, and everything that we try to do. There have been times when Max called me and said, we need your help, and we've stepped up and done that. I won't mention what those are. These septic systems, this is why they have this management program in Middle Florida around the springs, is that they have grants that help to pay for these septic tanks. Now, I have found a company, an engineering company, Lombardo and Associates, out of Massachusetts, and this is their specialty, is protecting bays like this. They've worked in Malibu, California, Cape Cod, Nantucket, the Hamptons. They've also worked with Leon County on their septic tank problem. They worked with Wakulla and in Sarasota, Wakulla, Leon, and one other county in Florida, and they are licensed in Florida. They have a system that is a permeable barrier system that, and the way he described it to me is, you've got this area where you've had these bad septic tanks, and it's like dirty bath water. And in order to clean that water, you've got to flush it all out. Well, the problem is, it would take us years and years and years to flush it out. So if we take this barrier and put it along our coastline, this barrier filters everything that's upstream before it gets into the bay. And in the little packet that I gave you is a picture. This picture is not very good, I'm sorry, because of printing, but if you'll see the area in the brown, that is their pilot program that shows where this barrier has been put in place. And you see the green on either side is algae that's been created by those bad septic tanks. But this barrier has filtered everything out, and it takes a very short time period to do that. And then you can see there's some different illustrations to show you how it filters the water through, and then there's some scales that give you how it starts off and what the actual grade is when it ends up. And this graph is of the same area that's in the picture, this one. And you'll see that this is the contaminated area, and this is the area after it goes through this box. And you see how that is completely clean. So what I would suggest that this planning commission can recommend to the BCC, you know, due to the things that you're seeing come through here and the things that are being approved on all portions of the bay, north and south. This can be used for stormwater, any kind of wastewater. And it can be used for light commercial, heavy commercial as well, but that's not something we typically have near the bay. Light commercial, residential, any type area, they can do it. What I suggest is that we have a Choctawhatchee Bay Clean Water Initiative for Walton County, and that we request that the Board of Commissioners take the following actions, and that is for your committee, your commission, to ask them to take these actions so that it makes your job easier when they come through MAC and when it comes to you, then your job is easier because you don't feel so bad about what you know is going to go into that bay. So I would ask that they pass a resolution supporting the county's determination to improve overall water quality of Choctawhatchee Bay, form a Choctawhatchee Bay Advisory Board, just like we have for the coastal dune lakes, that would oversee all of this, that would help to establish grants, find grant money to help work to save our bay. Order a feasibility study to determine initiatives to take over this initiative, that would take this initiative forward, and then take immediate steps to initiate those findings. Now, in my talks with Mr. Lombardo, the feasibility study that he gave me, that he could do within 60 days of it being ordered at a cost of approximately $30,000. Now, that is a drop in the bucket to what we would spend to clean that bay up. And so we could spend that, he said we could spend that money on the feasibility study, and then from that feasibility study gain grant money to do a pilot program in Choctaw Beach, put in the permeable barrier, and do that pilot study and see how that turns out. And then he can develop a program that would combine these special advanced system septic tanks in areas that because there's some areas that we can't put this barrier. It wouldn't work because of development. But this would give us an idea of what we could do in Walton County to protect the bay. And so it's a combination of several things. And this man, this Lombardo Associates, this is their expertise. They do this all over the world, but they focus on the United States and they focus on protecting watersheds. And that is their specialty. I haven't done any research on any other companies just because he's given me such great information. Of course, he could, provide his credentials and everything. And of course, that would be something the BCC would have to work through. But I would hope that y'all would take this as an initiative for y'all to take forward to the BCC. And Danny had asked me to come and present what we've done. And you know what has happened on the south end with the coastal dune lakes. And you know how beautiful they are and how we have worked towards having the new bridges put in and now the septic tanks being removed. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to move that forward to also save the bay. So that's pretty much what I had to say to you. Do you have any questions?
I do. Does this also help filter out untreated stormwater discharge, like the problem they're having in Sandestin and Driftwood?
Yes. What they work on as well is where the pond systems that they have that may not be sufficient in that particular situation, they would be able to add to those things with the box systems for stormwater, a barrier, And they would develop a program for that. But he told me that problem could be solved very easily, privately with Sandestin or publicly through the municipality. The other thing, talking about what it will filter out, and I told him, that we border, Eglin borders close to our bay and in some places dips all the way down. And he said it is not common, but it is not uncommon for areas to have nitrates that are from explosives that have been used in ranges like we have at Eglin. And that this barrier would also work for anything that could be filtering out of Eglin into the bay. And there's actually 2 creeks that border that area that come down into the bay, and that you would do a protection of all of that area.
One of the things that got me really interested in this new septic tank is a few months ago, or maybe a month ago, we approved this rather large RV park right there on Trout Creek. And there's no sewage that goes that far down 20. So right now, as the plan goes, they're going to be having these old school septic tanks there to treat all this RV sewage right there on Trout Creek, which is going to seep into the bay.
And for that development, they have community septic systems that are these advanced systems that could be put in, and the county could require this system within this zone that should be created just like our coastal dune lake protection zone. And there is a community system that would handle all of that instead of individual or multiples or the old systems.
Is the cost comparable to the old systems, or?
The cost is not comparable to the old systems. That's why in the middle part of Florida that I describe and over just a little bit west of Tallahassee, that area has a grant program that was established, which is something we would want to work towards. And right now, there's just been several different acts passed for the environment in the recent days, that there could be funding in there that we could use to help with this, but we would need our grant writers to do that. We have those, and we would work through that. And then we also have a lobbyist, and that lobbyist could then lobby for us to get some grant funding established for this. And if for the individual homeowner, especially in middle Florida where this was happening, they were close to the springs, someone would buy a tract and they would want to put in a double wide. So your double wide and your septic tank was about half the cost of what your double wide was. Say $15,000, you're buying a $30,000 double wide, and then these are not people that can afford that, but it was a requirement. So that was why this grant fund was established. So this is something that we would have to work towards, and that's why I'm calling it an initiative and a resolution to our commitment. And then let's form a committee like we have, an advisory board, and let's work towards it. I don't know how long it would take us, but it's better than what we're doing now. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, and I think that Dan as well, from seeing the things that he's seen just since he's been here, how we could do some things here to help.
So if we didn't want to just give lip service to being more environmentally astute and protecting our natural resources, and we don't just say thank you for business as usual. Can somebody tell me, I don't know if it would be Mr. Carpenter, Michelle, possibly Mr. Jones, how do we go forward with this and try and make a positive difference?
I guess we make a recommendation to the board, can't we, to check into it?
To check into it, or to start, would that be the first action?
I would think. I mean, I assume there's going to be a lot of questions about it, and probably checking into.
Well, if you started with that, you recommend that they form a clean water initiative, and then I've given you a copy of those bullet points, and maybe use those bullet points as your suggestions, your recommendations as to some things they could do to move the project forward.
Did you have something, Mr. Carpenter?
To answer your question.
From a procedural standpoint, what we typically do, if we have a proposal that we'd like to, that would involve amending the code or the comprehensive plan, we bring that to the Board of County Commissioners and ask their permission to move forward with the process to amend the code.
And that bringing forward is through planning staff. Yeah,
So at this point, do we make a motion?
that would be in order if the commission wishes to ask Mac and his staff to make a request of the Board of County Commissioners to adopt the,
Choctawhatchee Bay Clean Water Initiative is
Yeah.
what I've coined it.
so, yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the Choctawhatchee Bay Clean Water Initiative to be forwarded up to the BCC.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. We got any more questions?
Do we have any public comment or anybody on Zoom that wants to weigh in?
I don't know. We've already made a motion, so.
My bad.
I mean, I don't know that.
You can entertain public comment prior to the vote.
Okay, well then let's do that. Let's, I think I saw a hand come up that wanted to speak. Ms. Ward?
Hi, Melissa Ward with Dunlap and Shipman. And first, let me say, I commend Ms. Hurd for coming up and bringing up the information, and Mr. Cosin for bringing it to your attention. I would like to suggest that while you all are working on this, that I know that the city of Freeport and Latilda, as their director over there, is working on a committee for a very similar, if not in the same vein, and that they would be coordinated so that you have a really, truly good countywide effort, as Freeport is directly related. Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak on this? How about anybody on Zoom? No? Okay. Well, I agree, it's something that's needed, because, I mean, our bay is probably our second biggest asset in the area, so, I mean, we're running out of beachfront, and it's hard to get on there these days, too.
I say, you know, I have worked with Jay Tusa as well in trying to focus on some ecotourism. And we've built this beautiful park under the bridge that could be utilized. People don't even know that it's there, really. We've built the park on the other side of the bridge. There is so much activity that could result around the bay where people don't realize that they can even move off the beach. That's why we focus on the coastal dune lakes as much as we do. And the recreation on the coastal dune lakes has just increased tremendously through what we've done. And so I hope that we could do that for the bay as well, and get it back to a fishing industry that we had before, you know, a much stronger fishing industry.
Yeah.
You know, agriculture and tourism, they're our main economic drivers in Walton County. That's what we have. And so I think that is a point to be taken.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we've got a motion and a second, and I think we've let everybody speak that wanted to, so, all right, let's hear the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, Mac?
Thank you, Commissioners, Mr. Chairman. First item we have on the legislative agenda is an item that we have continued from January while we work through the changes necessary to Land Development Code to make these map changes for the former Black Creek Special Planning Area. We'd like to ask this item be continued to the April 8th Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, we have a motion?
I so move.
Second?
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioners. Item number 4, the Land Development Code amendments that are related to urban residential and mixed-use zoning. I think we have a proposal to bring to you tonight beyond what we had put in the package, which was just a little bit more tweaking that we think might be in the best interest of the county. I'll ask Chris and Shell to present those to you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got 2 text amendments to the LDC that basically add some of the Black Creek Special Planning Area language into these zoning districts that we're amending those holdover parcels to. Does everybody remember kind of the backstory here with the Black Creek special area going away, and we still have these remaining pieces that we needed to deal with. And so you have an amendment to village mixed use and an amendment to urban residential. And I gave you, so there was an email from Mr. Odom, who's one of the property owners. I don't know, is he here? Okay, Randy can speak. So we are okay with that amendment. We just have a substitute draft for you here on the urban residential, and we only made some small changes so that it fit better with our code, so that we weren't confusing, say, the 100-foot buffer with our uncomplimentary land use buffer that's in Chapter 5. It's really not the same animal. So we wanted to be clear that, you know, they weren't subject to the planting requirements, but that they were subject to the stormwater and perpetual maintenance requirements on that buffer. And then we also clarified in the allowable uses in Section E that basically the only change to the allowable uses is that multifamily is allowed, and that is because that was allowed in the Black Creek Special Planning Area, so to maintain their entitlement. Anybody have any questions on that? And then the village mixed use is similar, and I think Mark may have a slight tweak to that we want to make to make sure that we use the same language when water and sewer is not available on the density and intensity. So there may be just a slight change there asked for, which staff is also in concurrence with.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
No, I read through it. It's pretty easy to understand. Yes, sir, Mr. Davis.
Mark Partington on behalf of QUASI. We do have one small change that we'd like to add. And first of all, let me thank Kristen and Stephen Schoen. They have been open to our request, and we've gone back and forth. They've accepted some, rejected some, and have spent a considerable amount of time making sure there was no upzoning as a result of this change, and quite frankly, on the other side, no downzoning. But we're really happy with the product. The only change we'd like to see is if you look at Section 5A for the urban residential, it doesn't include language for what the density is if there is no water and sewer available. And in previous portions of the proposal, you'll note, for instance, at Section 4A, it says a maximum of 1 unit per acre served by septic, consistent with the infrastructure policy 1.2.1.5. In other words, it tells us, it says what you have available, the higher densities when you have water, sewer, septic available. I'm sorry, water and sewer available, but not what the densities that are allowed when you only have septic tanks available. And so, just for consistency, clarity, and making sure everybody understands what those densities are when you don't have water and sewer hookups, we just like that language added in the beginning of the paragraph at 5A. Does that make sense? Yeah. Questions about that? And I've talked to Stephen Schoen last week, and he didn't have any particular objection, or he thought it was a decent idea.
Okay.
Mr. Atkinson, until we get a better septic system online, are we bound by law to continue improving development that's got the old school antiquated style septic system?
There's nothing that.
Okay. Sir, I don't know that you're in a position where you are prohibited from approving development using current systems, unless there's a regulatory issue come down from the state of Florida on you that comes above the county level. I don't see why you'd be in a position why you would have any other or any basis to deny development that's complying with existing regulatory standards. If they meet existing environmental standards promulgated by the state, the county can't supersede state law.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Stephen Tatum from Matthews and Jones. I represent a company called Village Capital. They own about 200 of these 500 some odd acres. What they do is provide multifamily housing around the country, actually. Most of it in a workforce housing range of prices. They're interested in developing this when water and sewer makes its way out there, or even helping make water and sewer get out there. But they were hoping to maybe get the density bonuses that are allowed in the rest of urban residential, which is up to 10 units an acre, applied within the Blackwater, or the new Black Creek area, whatever we're going to call it, how we're going to refer to that. So I didn't know if that would be something that you would consider, given the need for workforce housing in the area. I mean, it's difficult to build already with prices, so the more you can maximize your space. And they do have 200 units. They would still be set back. They're surrounded by Nakusi, at least on 3 sides. And then they're bordered by Black Creek Road on the other.
How many acres you said they had?
200 total.
And what's their density now?
Well, there's nothing right now, and they don't even have plans for what they want to do.
No, I mean, what will it be
Once
under
water
the-
and sewer's there, they'd be able to get 4 units an acre.
So you're looking at, what, 800 units?
Yeah, it's in the draft here. Section D, conditional uses allowed, item 1.
Right draft then. Oh, okay, so are you saying that would apply to the entire district, even in Black Creek? Because I did know it was there. If it's going to apply even in the old Blackwater Creek, or Black Creek, whatever we call that thing.
It does.
Okay, well then, if that's the case, then there's no problems.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm sorry to have wasted your time.
I'm sorry, I was misunderstanding. I thought you were asking for more than they had already put in there. That's what was
Well,
confusing me.
I was
So
until
that's
I
why
realized I
asking
was
how
reading
much
it wrong.
density have you got? So,
Well, thank you.
all right, thank you. Okay, yes, sir.
Excuse me, Randy Gardner, on behalf of Mr. Odom and his companies that actually own several hundred acres in the Black Creek area. And I just was reviewing the staff amendment that was substituted on the floor, which has answered 95% of my questions and reads very well. And I feel Mr. Odom will feel the same, who would have been here tonight, except being out of town. I don't want y'all to smile when I bring this up, is multifamily housing, which has been added in the text. Excuse me, and on the last page, item E. If I may, Kristen, is to clarify, multifamily housing would include, which again, is going to be some potentially redundant, I would assume it includes townhomes, duplexes, triplexes, anything that's multifamily. But I want to be certain that that's not something that would be discussed at a later date as to what truly is multifamily housing.
Kristen? Did you hear that? He wants a definition of multifamily housing, basically.
To include include
yes.
townhomes, duplexes,
Yes.
quadruplexes, anything at all.
The district already allows attached and detached. Detached is up to 3,
No.
so that's a duplex and a triplex. Multifamily is 4 and above, so I added multifamily to cover that.
Understood, which I realized when I read the original draft. Attached, I assume meant multifamily of some type.
Attached means duplex and triplex.
And where does townhomes fit into it? Under the multifamily?
If they are
They'll be
3 of
attached.
them attached, or 4 or more attached, it's multifamily, but the whole range is allowed.
Oh,
So it
the whole
doesn't-
range under
Yeah, it
multifamily.
doesn't matter. They can go attached, detached, or multifamily. The reason why I changed the text is because I wanted our staff to have the familiar text that relates back to our table of allowable uses and not get us all messed up on terminology, but it's the same exact thing you had.
Understood.
Yeah.
Now, the original draft made reference to clustering. I'm certain that's already in the code, so that doesn't change.
Yes.
How about how about wetland density transfers? That doesn't change.
Well, that's not yet.
We better get in a hurry.
I did want to mention that the workforce housing is a conditional use. Is that okay? Okay, I just want to be clear that everybody understood that. So that means that has to be approved by the ZBA, and the criteria would be reviewed about, we're currently working on a policy for the board about workforce housing bonuses where, you know, it sets kind of the parameters of how long they have to stay that way, what price they are, how they arrive at the price. So the conditional use would relate back to that and have to be approved by the ZBA.
So whether it qualifies as workforce housing is determined by ZBA?
Well, no, the statutes were amended last year to say what workforce housing is. So the county, we're trying to pick up the change to the statute. It's at 80% of area median income. So they took a hit at it last year, and we have a draft. Actually, we're going to be bringing that to you next month. Housing methodology policy that we would like the board to adopt by resolution that picks up the statutory change and also describes our parameters so that everybody's doing the same thing fairly and equally, and that we know what we mean and you know, what the policy is related to what is workforce housing and how long it has to be workforce housing, et cetera, et cetera.
Understood. I have no further questions. Thank you
sir.
very much.
All right, we got anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, Michelle, real quick, with regard to the question you had on the attached versus detached, is that specifically defined elsewhere in the Land Development Code where can we put a citation to that as defined in section blank, blank, blank? So there's no confusion about the point Mr. Gardner made. It seems like we're calling it out in a separate form here.
Well, I just referenced back in my draft to section B, which lists is our listing of primary uses. And in the back of the code, there's a table that says these are what the primary uses are. It's
Just put a cross-reference to the table, I think, or even a footnote as a cross-reference to the table. That would probably alleviate the concern that Mr. Gardner is having, where it looks like it's creating different standards between multifamily and what is attached.
okay.
All right, anybody else want to speak on this? Do you have anybody on Zoom that wants to speak on it? Commissioners, you got any questions on anything? All right, seeing none, what are your wishes?
Motion to approve.
With the amendments that Mr. Gay
Yes,
is
yeah, we need the
proposing.
amendments in there. There was two. One that Mr. Atkinson asked to be put in there, and it's got 4. Yes, okay. That's your motion?
It is.
Did you want to repeat it, or are you going to go with that?
I'm going to go with that.
Okay, if we have a second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioners. Mr. Chairman, the next section of our agenda is quasi-judicial, so we will need to be sworn in.
Anyone wishing to speak on item 5, the Windswept Phase 6 Developers Agreement, or item 6, the Goldsby Road Commerce Park item, needs to be sworn at this time. Please stand and raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Matt Carpenter,
Do hereby solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony I present
testimony I present,
will be the truth, the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The audience and staff is sworn.
Thank you, sir. All right, Mac.
Mr. Chairman, we're at agenda item number 5, the Windswept Phase 6 Developers Agreement. This is a request to approve by agreement. It's been reviewed by Renee Bradley, who unfortunately can't be here tonight, so I'm going to do my best to stand in for her. This developer agreement is submitted by Matthews and Jones on behalf of Northwest Florida Properties to set development controls on the proposed future land use and official zoning district change from the current future land use of estate residential and general ag to a future land use of rural residential and the current zoning district of estate residential and general agriculture to rural village on approximately 62.3 acres. The site is adjacent to the Windswept Golf Course and residential development on the north side of Highway 20 east of Freeport. Staff has reviewed the developer agreement along with our council. And essentially, this is integrating this particular Phase 6 into the Windswept residential development. It addresses connections to that development and basically drives the traffic out the main entrance to the Windswept development that already exists, as opposed to creating a new, a higher traffic entrance at J.D. Hollington. Stephen Tatum here is here to present their developer agreement.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Stephen Tatum again for the record. I think it was last month, and maybe even January's meeting now, I don't remember, that you've already approved the land use and zoning change, or at least sent it on, and that's already actually been approved by the BCC, at least for the transmittal to the state. This is just the developer agreement that we actually discussed that night before you guys, that Melissa had helped draft just the day before. That's all this is. It states, no more than 80 units, no commercial uses, no more than 2 stories tall, and leaves it at that. So,
Yep, I think we went through all that at the last meeting, so.
all right, thank you.
Any questions for the applicant? All right, yes, ma'am.
Melissa Ward with Dunlap and Shipman. Dunlap and Shipman represents the Windswept Estates Association. And in support of this developer agreement, I just wanted to reiterate, the purpose of this is that the amendment would change this to rural village. Rural village is a density of 2 units per acre. That 2 units per acre, calculated over 62 acres, is over 124 units. And Mr. Smith agreed right up front that he would cap it at no more than 80 units. And then the other 2 characteristics of this developer agreement is that they would be consistent with the rest of that master plan with single-family homes on those lots that are no more than 2 stories high. The non-residential component is because rural village is a mixed-use category that allows quite a bit of actual non-residential use. And those uses might include things like outdoor activity type things. We are not in any way, and I think it's in the developer agreement, suggesting they can't have amenities to the subdivision so long as they meet with the rest of the association approval. So we will thank you for hearing it, and we appreciate the applicant and his attorney working with us.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
We got anybody else that would like to speak on this? We got somebody on Zoom? Okay, then we'll close public comments. Commissioners, you got any questions? What are your wishes?
Move to approve.
Have a motion, we have a second. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, Mac, we got one more, don't we?
Last item.
Just in time.
This is the
Good winging it, huh?
Like he knew what he was gonna do when he got up there.
This is the Goldsby Road Commerce Park, our final agenda item tonight. You may recall this is one of 2 parcels that the board approved as general commercial on Goldsby Road a few years back, for some of y'all who've been around long enough to remember that. We recently approved an apartment complex on the parcel on the west side of Goldsby Road with Mr. John King's application. And now this is a proposed 90,000 square feet commerce park on approximately just under 10 acres. It's been reviewed by Tim Brown, and I'll ask Tim to provide you a little more detail.
All right, thank you.
Good evening, Tim Brown with Planning and Development.
So this is a major development order application submitted by Jenkins Engineering requesting approval to develop a 90,000 square foot commerce park on 9.94 acres with a future land use commercial and a zoning of general commercial. It's located on the east side of Goldsby Road, north of Highway 98 and south of Commercial Parkway. They're going to have a proportionate fair share of $47,606.18. Other than that, it's compliant with all of our regulations. I would request that the staff report be entered into the record, and I will entertain any questions you may have.
Okay. Got any questions for staff?
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Mr. Eubank.
Evening, Commissioners. Jamie Eubanks with Jenkins Engineering. I'll echo what Tim said and what Max said. This came before the BCC probably 4 or 5 years ago and was changed to general commercial. It's essentially a mirror image of what's to the north, except to the north is a little more intense. It's actually zoned industrial. So this is more your small business, showroom type, maybe cabinetry shop, things like that, small contractors' offices. One of the conditions that I do want to point out of the previous approval through the BCC for the land use change was actually that there's a neighborhood to the east, and that is why you will notice the large buffer on the east-hand side of this property. There's actually 1.5 acres that was required to be set aside, and that is what they've done here. There's actually 1.51 acres that is set aside as a natural buffer to buffer from that neighborhood. And then lastly, I had a question about the impervious area. Since there are wetlands, typically 85% would be the number for this particular zoning. Since we do have some wetland impacts, it actually drops all the way down to 40%. However, we only propose 35%, so only about 1/3 of the site is impervious. So with that, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
There are some wetlands in there. What are they doing to either remove them or?
So there's some, if you, I'll go to your staff report because I know it's probably handier for you to look at. There's a existing wetland map that you might see in that, which I think gives a good idea of the area as a whole. And one of the characteristics of this site in this particular wetland area is actually that it's very isolated and low quality. So over the years, with the development to the north, with the development of Goldsby Road, with the neighborhood to the east, this is actually a pocket of wetlands that was cut off years ago, and since then it's kind of withered, to be perfectly honest. However, with that in mind, they've actually gone through and got their core and DEP permits.
Already done that?
They have. It was a suggestion back in the day. I don't know if it came directly from the board, but let's put it this way. They've already got their FEMA approval for their Clomer F, as well as their Army Corps permit and their DEP permit for the wetland impacts. And they did do an alternative analysis. So that's why you see, particularly on the south end of the site, there's actually a retaining wall they'll be building because they're actually keeping the majority of the wetlands along the south and of course, the east end of the site where the buffer is.
Okay. Did they have to mitigate, or what did they do on that?
They did. They did have mitigation costs, probably through NCOSI.
Probably. Okay. All right, that was my question. Y'all got any questions for them? All right, thank you, sir.
I'll be here.
All right, is there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak on this? Yes, sir.
My name is Hans Butelman. I'm one of the residents on that
Spell
property.
your last name for
Last name spelled Beutelman. First name Hans, Hans.
Thank you.
And I reside at 218 Preston Path. So I think you've got the image up here. I'm actually on the circle end of the path, so I'm actually right almost next to that.
East side of
Yeah,
this
on the east side.
property.
So
Okay.
I'm on the very east side of the property. And as already been noted, and I was one of those people that came before the BCC several years ago, and you're right, that was like 4 or 5, I forget now, so long ago. Yeah, 2016? Yes. To argue about the fact that a lot of us were extremely concerned about more commercial development coming in right adjacent to residential areas. As you imagine, we as homeowners are extremely concerned about both the impact on our property values. We're also concerned about the impact on flooding with more and more commercialized development coming in. And you all recognize that there is already an existing development immediately north of this facility. So you've got two commercial developments right next to each other with no buffering between them or anything. We appreciate that, and the expectation, I'm glad to hear that it's recognized that that buffer is going to be there. We were very concerned about how that buffer was going to be managed. I noticed on the plan, and so we've seen many versions, many plans over the last 4 or 5 years, that there is I guess when you say wet detention, is that a retention pond? Yeah. So originally it was proposed that that be the buffer area, which we also objected to. Said, no, we don't want a retention pond right next to our street. And I see it's now moved to the other side, which is also good. Again, I want the board to be cognizant of the fact that we as homeowners very much are concerned about continued commercial development encroaching on residential areas. I mean, the buffer zone is great, but that means there's still a commercial development right next door to us. The question that we have as homeowners on the street, and I'm also representing our HOA, the Trade Winds HOA, I'm the vice president, is the retention wall. The area that's immediately to the, I guess you call that what I would look at as being the southwest of us, or the southeast corner of the lot, that is a low point because the water flows, I'm sorry, that's kind of a high part and the water flows going to the bay. And it's been our experience that this area back here gets very, very wet. So our concern is, what is this retention wall going to do? Is this retention wall going to divert water into our conservation area? And I don't know if it has been looked at, studied, or determined.
We have, and we did look at that as part of the FEMA process as well for the 100-year storm, and of course going through the alternative analysis with the Army Corps. So the retaining wall only, if you're looking at the site plan, adheres along the south end of buildings 10 through 15. Part of the reason for keeping that buffer as well was to not cut off access so that anything that would drain to the east would still continue to the north. There's actually an existing pond north of that buffer site that is a bit of a low point. I don't know if the aerial's up or not, but
One over here, if you can see it.
you can see that low point there.
Uh-huh.
And again, you can see the pond on the aerial, I think, for the property next door. And that was to make sure that nothing gets prevented from going to those points. In addition, there'll be areas that go to our own wet detention pond. It's designed at an elevation that it can still flow into. So I don't see any reason that this would ever back up into the neighbor's yard. The existing flow patterns will remain the same.
Just so it's clear, the area that's to the south here on that south end and also south end of our property, that's all conservation area. Not going to ever be built on.
You're talking about
This area right in here, this is all conservation.
Oh,
area.
on your particular
Yeah,
subdivision?
on our subdivision.
Gotcha.
That's all conservation. The actual homeowners lots start over here.
Understood.
And the other one, I think the closest one is still like much further over.
And that is one reason when we were going through the alternative analysis with the Corps and DEP, the wetlands that were to remain stayed along the south buffer to still tie into that
So
conservation
does the
area.
water, is your anticipation that water is going to flow in this direction towards this retention pond?
Yes, so everything site-wise is designed to go to that retention pond.
Okay. So I guess the question I have for the board is, when this order is approved, and we're not opposed necessarily to the order, that this buffer zone, which, as you know, was approved by the BCC, this is somehow written into the order and is not ever going to find its way out. Am I correct in that assumption?
Well, it's part of their development order, so if they change it, I think they'd be in a violation of the development order.
Well, it's part of the BCC order, too. The BCC approved this.
If I could speak to that directly. The BCC approved this special buffer on this particular site in the Land Development Code. So regardless of whether this development comes here or not, that buffer is still required by whatever development goes there.
Gotcha.
The only way that buffer can go away is an amendment to the Land Development Code to remove it from these two sites, and then an amendment to whatever development order might be in place. I think it was the BCC subdivision.
Yeah.
is still in place, and that is what is being called on.
All right.
All right, no further comment.
Thank you, sir. We got anybody else wants to speak on this?
Mr. Hahn? You represent all these neighbors out here?
Well, because of the size of the lot. Actually, only a few of us got a letter. Only 3 homeowners. We had actually our HOA meeting.
Are y'all okay with this?
There's no, people, the biggest fear that people have are the 2 things that I mentioned. Flooding and water runoff into their areas, into their property. Because there's no place for water to drain. I mean, that's been a recurring issue. Many of you, I don't know if you're familiar, if you recall, not immediately to the north of us, but just to the north of us is a second. North of that stone gate. That originally was proposed as an apartment complex. And we fought that like mad with the BCC because we said, wait a second, where's the water going to go? Because you've got so much coverage going over there. Eventually, it was done as residential. And by the way, I'll tell you right now, the area looks very nice. It was a very nice addition to having residential as opposed to 3-story apartment buildings. So flooding is the big issue. It's a big concern about where water is going to go.
The residents and the citizens of Walton County in that neighborhood, that affected neighborhood, do y'all want this development in there or not?
We're not anti-development, but I can tell you, we would prefer that residential areas be better protected, because it seems to us that they're not.
Well, I'm used to being the odd man out on environmental issues,
Okay.
and I'm used to, and I'm the one that usually backs the citizens, and I usually get outvoted, and that's okay. At the end of the day, we're all friends, and we're all on the same
Yeah,
side.
I understand that. And I will say that, we, over the years, the parties involved, we went from original designs that we saw, the original plans had, literally development right up to the edge of our conservation property. And that's a very sliver of a piece of land next to that.
Are the citizens in your neighborhood, they want this, yes or no?
I think if they had their choice, they would say no.
Okay, I'm getting a weak vibe from you.
Okay, I'm going to, if I'm going to speak for the citizens of that HOA, that Preston Path, I would say they would say no. I am not opposed to development, but I want there to be restrictions on how much development there is with regards to adjacent residential areas and what you have going adjacent to residential areas. I mean, I'll tell you, from my perspective, I don't want to even see or hear that place is there. And I'm hoping the buffer's going to do that. Because I shouldn't have to contend with, we already have an industrial park that's to the north. And every morning at 6 a.m., there's people out there doing work and we can hear them. And I don't want to hear these guys at all. I don't want to hear them. I don't want to see them. So I want protection. I would prefer that, personally, just so that everybody knows, the original buffer that we had asked for was 2 acres. And it got cut down to 1.5 acres. And that was what the BCC agreed upon, which is fine.
And this was in 2016?
2016, yeah. So quite some time ago. So for the people who live on our street, I think they would prefer not to see commercial development immediately adjacent to them. And I prefer not to see it either, but, development is development. I'm not opposed to development, but I think, again, in terms of development, when it comes to putting a commercial property of any kind right next to residential areas, and keep in mind, when we all bought our houses back here, there was no commercial properties. This all came in over time. So it just seems to us that more and more commercial work is being encroached on into what are residential areas. So at some point, people are going to say, I've had enough, and leave. And that doesn't help you either. So.
All right, we got anybody else who wants to speak on this? We got anybody on Zoom? Okay, we'll close public comments. I think, Mr. Eubanks, you didn't have anything to address on his last comments, did you? Okay. All right. Well, I think based on, what our parameters are, this is this falls within the land development code and the comp plan, which are the rules that we have to follow. And I think they've worked with the applicant, with the neighbors to do the best that they could in this situation. So, I understand what you're saying, and yeah, we all would love to pick our neighbors and be able to decide what they build, but they don't give us that option.
You're 100% correct, and I'm okay being the odd man out. I'm going to go with the citizens, and it's okay. It's okay. I don't mind being the odd man out.
Well, it is nice when somebody that's proposing a development at least tries to work their neighbors to do the best they can to appease them, and because we've seen where some of them have tried to ram it down their throats. That doesn't work too well either. So in this situation, at least they've worked with them to some extent. All right, anybody else got any questions? All right, what are your wishes, board?
Move to approve.
We have a motion?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
Thought we might have one. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. That concludes our agenda this evening.
No, we got one more thing on there.
At
unless
least
we-
the planning portion of it.
Oh, okay, yes, okay. We do have one more thing, and I'm not.
Actually, there's two. There's one that's not on the agenda.
Well,
Mr. Jones is aware of it.
okay, well, let's do this mileage reimbursement. I don't know what that is, so who's gonna,
Explain it.
did you propose this?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Because there was no explanation with it.
Yeah, there's nothing with it, so I didn't know what it was, so.
Okay, so anyway, I found out that there's some statutory allowance for mileage. If you're on the planning committee and you need to go someplace for your monthly meeting like we're doing right now, you're allowed by Florida statutes mileage consideration, compensation. And that's where it ends. However, the county is authorized to go above and beyond. And I've really been trying to learn as much as I can. And I've been going down to the South Courthouse Annex on these workshops concerning the mobility plan, which is a very, very big deal that we're having a special meeting on this month, 23rd or something like that. Am I correct? Okay, so I'm trying to educate myself as much as I can, and I asked Ms. Owens, who I turn in my mileage to. She said we're not authorized at this point to include workshops or anything else concerning anything above and beyond our monthly meeting. However, there is the BCC can approve more, and there's already precedent set with other committees right here in Walton County where the mileage and training is compensated. So as far as, and I'm just going to speak for myself, and I may even be able to speak for Ms. Barber. Ms. Barber and I have ended up at the same workshop together, and because I drove all the way down to the South Annex from Defeniac Springs, and she lived close by. She was kind enough to let me stay, and she went home because of the sunshine. And so I made 2 trips down to workshops, one for 30A and one for Miramar, within a week, and that was 100 miles. That was 100 miles. And if we really want to take this job seriously, there's a lot of things that the books and online and there's nothing that beats, as the infantry used to say, you can't get any better intelligence than putting boots on the ground. And there's nothing wrong with going out and looking and seeing like what some of the citizens are concerned about. So I'm proposing that we get the same treatment as other Walton County committees, and that we get compensated for all planning related matters concerning mileage and training.
Okay. I'm not, I'm gonna have to have some help on this one, because I've never been reimbursed on any mileage, for that matter, so.
Okay, and that's on you. I just found out this, and I just learned this, and I had to sit on this until such time that we were all together and could discuss it because of the sunshine.
Yeah, okay. And the other thing is, on these meetings, I mean, who determines who's supposed to go and eligible to go to these meetings? Because I know a lot of times they ask us not to attend things so that we're not biased by decisions that may come before this board.
That's going to be a decision of county policy on if they want to include that. I think to Mr. Cosen's point, if the board were to request the BCC consider allowing additional expenses that exceed that which is authorized by Florida statute, and the county can do so by ordinance resolution, they would need to adopt that policy. So it ultimately up to the BCC to set that determination of what is an allowable expense, what the proper travel is, and what the parameters of that are. So I think if the board is interested, you can certainly ask the BCC to consider it, but it'll be up to them to amend their travel policy to better define these issues for advisory board members.
And what about a determination on who, since we've got, you mentioned the sunshine laws, you're saying that two people were at the same meeting, and I didn't know sunshine laws, if two people were there, is that against the rules?
That was a questionable call.
I was told we couldn't both be there, and I volunteered to be the one
Thought you weren't
that
supposed to talk when you were there. And that,
Mere presence probably is not going to create a situation. It's something we like to be aware of. It's something we try to notice at the county level, that more than one member of the same board is going to be present to fully cover our boards. We do that, for instance, more than one county commission member is often at the EDA meeting, and so we include an additional identifier on the agenda of that effect. But that would be a policy determination as part of this that I think the county would need to address, is if they're going to authorize you to go to these workshops and receive mileage, they need to address what notice needs to be given, if any.
so it sounds like we've got some issues that would need to be worked out on this, don't we?
Well, it's going to be above your head is what I would say.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's got to be done at the county commission level, so. And they're
So
gonna
if you want them to explore, all you can do is make the motion to ask them to look into it, and staff will bring you something back.
Okay.
So, the good thing is that, there's already precedence right here in county, in our own county, Walton County, other committees. And, just so you don't think this is just some wild tangent I'm on, I did, brief this idea on one of our commissioners. I got the green light to present it here, and that we will pass it, present it to them, they'll do the rest.
Okay. You want to make that motion?
I'd like to make a motion that the members of the planning department are allotted mileage for everything related to our duties here, which includes workshop and training.
I think you mean planning commission, not planning department. This is the planning commission.
Planning commission.
And we might need a clarification of who and which meetings they can go to also.
You know, I actually asked about that, and the only reason I was told that me and you had to leave is because there was one little box that wasn't checked as far as public notice goes. You remember something about that? Okay.
Well, what I thought was said when they were discussing it was that it wasn't officially noticed in the paper.
Okay,
And
that
so
was-
that
okay.
it was public, but not the official definition that they used, but they still felt that we should not both be at the meeting at the same time. And so I left and I watched it later at the 6 o'clock meeting instead, so.
So we need a clarification on that also, probably, I would think.
So what box was it checked?
I was not the county attorney at that time. I can't imagine there's a magic box to check. Mr. Jones
I would suspect it was the one council mentioned just a few moments ago that,
Well, to clear it all up, Kristen Shell was there. She was running the workshop. And when she saw both of us walk in, she said, uh-oh. So she picked up the phone and called council. And council said, one of them's gonna have to leave because, and I think Kristen can probably answer that question right now. Okay.
When we noticed those workshops, we did not include the notice that 2 or more elected officials, as we typically would do if commissioners are coming, would be in attendance. We've never noticed that 2 or more planning commissioners would be in attendance unless it's a planning commission scheduled special meeting.
Yeah, okay.
And that's, anytime commissioners are going to be present, we always add to the notice 2 or more commissioners may be present at the meeting.
So are we not supposed to attend?
Typically, my experience has been the guidance from legal counsel in years past for this board has been you're supposed to make your decision based on the evidence presented during the hearing.
So,
And
Only
if you've got
during
any
his,
external
not go to
contact
any
or
other-
any external
so
knowledge, you're supposed to disclose that as ex parte contact.
That's
before,
especially true during quasi-judicial
Uh,
proceedings prior to the hearing, so that it can be circulated to all parties and counsel for the parties.
And that way, everybody has the same information to consider.
Okay, what
here.
about, so Zoom, watching Zoom presentations on this is also fits in the same category?
I am going to have to defer to our legal counsel on that.
Unfortunately, when you're dealing with quasi-judicial proceedings, if you're receiving information that is coming from outside the sworn testimony you're hearing, you have to make what we call an ex parte disclosure of that fact. And therefore, we typically discourage you from trying to gain information outside because now you have to do a full disclosure of that. Now, is that a complete recording of the meeting you saw? Your impressions, your mental impressions are your own, of course. The concern becomes that something you are basing a decision on is something that not every member of this board would know, that not every member of the public, the applicant, those for, those against would know, and therefore your decision may, in fact, be legally tainted and subject the board's decision to invalidation ultimately. So that has always been discouraged from all planning boards I've worked with. I don't know of anything different at the county planning level. Certainly that is something that if there are certain workshops that it's encouraged that you attend, that's a policy issue that we would have to discuss. We'd have to look at how that could be handled. But certainly to the extent it could come before you, that's what triggers the sunshine implication. If it is any item that could come back before you as a board, it absolutely could become an issue that if you're both there discussing, would require that additional notice.
I will share one instance that clearly demonstrates what has been said. In my tenure on the board, we had a number of development orders challenged over the years. Very few of them did we lose or have overturned. The one that sticks out in my mind was, I don't remember the project or the date or the time, but 2 commissioners prior to the hearing went and visited the site. At the hearing, those commissioners offered their analysis of what they saw and what they thought based on what they found. And the project was denied. The applicant challenged it, and we got a scathing order back from the judge that said those 2 commissioners became witnesses. That is not their role, and it's totally improper that you will rehear this case in the absence of those 2 commissioners. So, you know, you can govern yourself from there, but the fact, what you find outside of these hearings can lead to some difficult situations.
Well, then I think we already have an issue with the mobility plan because he was at the earlier meeting and I watched it on Zoom later, so.
I think
Well,
Mr. Jones is referring to quasi-judicial items.
Yes.
The mobility plan will be a legislative item, and there's no prohibition on legislative
All
items.
right.
Yeah, we're dealing with about three different issues here. We're dealing with your quasi-judicial obligations, we're dealing with the potential sunshine law implications. Understand, the protective language about one or more, or two or more members may be present is not strictly necessary under the sunshine law. It is in an abundance of caution that it's issued. Certainly, we know that members of the same board may appear at other workshops, at other boards' meetings, things of that nature. And there are Attorney General's opinions that give a lot of cover and protection to board members there. The problem nonetheless becomes if both should happen to get drawn into a conversation and speak about it, and it's in a board that we as the county are holding, that we have put on, a workshop, a meeting, or that we are involved with, why wouldn't we notice it? It gives the utmost protection to you because, of course, your sunshine law liability is as an individual, both civil and criminal. So that's one. Your quasi-judicial obligations as a member of this board, your ex parte rules of disclosure, go into an entirely separate issue outside of sunshine law. So I think you have both of those. And the third, I guess, to direct us back, I believe we have a motion on the floor, not a second. So I think one thing we have to direct back to is what this is directly related to, and that is the mileage for those. One of the things when this comes to staff level that I'm certain Mr. Jones, Mr. Carpenter, and I'll work with them as well, can discuss is should there be any guidance offered about which meetings are included or not. I know Mr. Cosen's intent is anything necessary to do the job. If the BCC feels like there's some limitations on that or some guidance they can offer, they can do so, and then we can best craft the policy of how to address those. Workshops on issues like the mobility plan, as Mr. Carpenter noted, are legislative in nature, so that may be simply a sunshine law notice issue. It may not become a problem for quasi-judicial, but that's where we'll need to give you some direction, individual guidance. Our goal is to keep you all out of trouble.
And not to belabor the issue, but I hope council will agree with this. Even those instances where the notification says 2 or more commissioners or planning commissioners may attend, that simply says the public, there may be more than one there. That doesn't give you any cover of walking outside the building and, having a little conference about what we're going to do on this. That's still a violation.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
All we're covering is what happens in the middle of that meeting
That's correct.
itself.
Yeah.
On the public record for which minutes are taken.
Yeah, so it provides very limited cover, and it needs to be in the confines of the meeting itself.
Absolutely.
Okay, so if it wasn't for the fact that I've been going to these workshops, I would be lost on this mobility plan. There's so much to learn about it. So in order to do our job and make good, intelligent, educated decisions, we need to learn about it. So how do we do that? Are we allowed, yes or no? Can we go to workshop? Yes or no?
Depends on what the issue is, I think is what we've been saying.
Mobility.
Well, that's legislative.
Okay, what about agriculture?
But Mr. Cosen, you're missing the point of what we're discussing. It may be something the county has to do for your protection as well as for the protection of the county. I know your intent is to become educated on these issues, but understand what we're discussing is the broader issue. I know you're talking about just the mileage is all the motion is, but what we're having to make sure we do for you is provide you the coverage so that you aren't in trouble for being there around other people and offering comments, offering feedback, one of your other board members offering those feedback, because that will ultimately come before this board as well. So you're getting a preview of these issues. Now, if it's a quasi-judicial, you can't do that without having to make full ex parte disclosures, and that is a big challenge. But going a step beyond, please understand, one of the other penalties for sunshine law violations, if somebody were to come up, we pass this mobility plan, everybody likes it. Let's say y'all pass it, everybody says, this is the best thing we could do. We get brought to court and they say, well, actually, whole process was filed. The planning commission should not have been able to do it because 2 of those members were there talking about this at an unnoticed workshop. That could invalidate the whole plan. So in an effort to do the right thing and become more educated, you may inadvertently allow someone to challenge it. And so understand what we're saying is we will need a staff to make sure that to the extent that the planning board members are wanting to attend these workshops, we may have to take additional notice precautions. And that's certainly something that the county can do. It sounds like in that one issue, there was no such notice provided, and that becomes an issue. So I think what, my initial impression is that to the extent that staff wishes to hold these workshops, perhaps it's a simple reach out to each of the planning board, hey, this is a workshop being held, this item may come before you. If you plan to attend, please let staff know so far in advance so we can properly notice it. That may become burdensome on staff, and we may have to address that. But ultimately, it's going to become a question for the Board of County Commissioners to what degree they feel it's acceptable for their appointees to these boards or any advisory board to attend additional workshops and receive compensation in terms of mileage. That is yet another question. If you're being asked to attend them, then certainly we're going to have to take on the notice requirement. And then certainly you're entitled to pay if the BCC feels that's acceptable in terms of mileage. But I would say for tonight, the agenda item is on the mileage reimbursement. That's the item we need to take up, Mr. Chairman. That's what's on your agenda. I don't know that we can actually, by board action, address the other one way or the other, but we can certainly get some guidance on that and probably do it as part of this policy that you're proposing.
So did somebody make the motion?
You did, but we don't have a second, unless Madam Clerk corrects me.
Basically, the motion is just on the mileage issue.
To authorize mileage for attendance of matters beyond, for matters necessary to fulfill one's obligations as a planning board member beyond that which is these meetings. And then let the board determine what that may be. I think that's about as comprehensive I can make your motion to let the BCC suss it out.
The only other word I'd like to throw in there is a training opportunity.
That's, and that the board will sort that out, yeah. I think that's implicit within his motion. Anything, training or otherwise.
Okay. All right, we have a motion. We have a second.
Should we give the board some direction on the reimbursable rate?
Well, I think that's set by the state.
It's set. It's the same thing the regular employees get.
What is that?
Probably 58 cents a mile, something like that, isn't it?
That's substantial evidence gas prices are going up.
Yeah, no. That's why I'm bringing this up.
You're asking for an increase, huh?
That's why I'm
Yes.
bringing this up.
Do we have a second? I mean, I don't see any reason why we can't let this go forward and ask them about it. I mean, one of the commissioners you said was asking about it. I mean,
Well, Mr. Chairman, if you don't have a second, the motion's got to die for lack of a second. If you want to make that second, you can pass the gavel to the co-chair, but that's where you're at.
that's what I'm thinking about. Co-chair's not here.
Well, then the chair, then I believe the chairman, we broadly follow Roberts, in cases where our policy is not clear, you designate who gets the gavel, so just don't sling it at them, and you're okay.
I'm gonna designate Barbara.
I knew you were.
She's right here, so
So you're seconding?
Are you going to second?
I will second the motion. Now, in that way, the commissioners can have it and do with it as they wish, so.
Well, Madam Chair, then I believe you're to ask for public comment and following that.
Have any public comment? Anyone on Zoom? All right. I call for a vote. Oh, you have a comment.
I have a question. Mr. Cosin was asking if he's trying to educate himself on some of these policies and things that are going to come before us. I mean, does he have access to staff and to ask questions and gain information regarding that stuff?
Yes, sir. Mr. Cosin has availed himself of those resources.
Okay.
And we certainly welcome that and are available at any time for any of the commissioners on any of these items. If you'd like to come in and visit with staff to better understand what's being presented before the meeting, we're absolutely available for that. Be very happy to do that.
All right, I guess I call for a vote, right? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
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 Motion does not carry.
All right, well, I think that concludes our business then, unless anybody's got anything else before we leave?
I had one other thing.
All right. I hesitate to ask, but we might as well go ahead, sir.
This is our only opportunity to put our heads together,
Yes.
and talk about something. I've got a couple of ideas that I'd like to share to see if these would be enhancements to the planning department.
All right.
So, one of the things that I would like to ask is, I've got some notes here that some employees have said that they wish there was more, public information on this. And
Let me ask something real quick. This is not on the agenda. It hasn't been, wasn't brought up. Is this something we can talk about? I mean, I know we can probably talk about it, but we can't really make a motion and.
You can take no action on an item that is not on your agenda.
You rather,
That's fine. This is just we don't ever get a chance to talk about things, so this is an opportunity to.
you're just bringing it up for discussion, but you're not trying to get a motion out of it.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. So, one of the things that eats up a lot of time every day for the planning department and other county employees is, like the short-term leases that everybody was hammering, the county on. Well, the short-term leases don't fall under the county, responsibilities. As a matter of fact, it's a state responsibility with the Division of Business and Professional Regulations. And the complaints they have that the county's taking regarding, the problems on, US 98. That's any state and federal highway, the county's got no, jurisdiction in.
Correct.
But because it's in Walton County, there's a lot of phone calls and a lot of time and energy, talking to people, trying to let them know, for example, Walton County's trying to destroy our wetlands. Well, the wetlands, the final jurisdiction and authority for wetlands is the Department of Environmental Protection. It's not Walton County, so we're getting a black eye unfairly. And they're knocking on the wrong doors when they're bothering our county commissioners and our planning people, on these issues. And the list goes on and on. So while we're here, I talked to Mr. Jones about this, and he said this has been addressed a long time ago, and I'm just thinking that maybe people either need to be reminded, and there's been a lot of new people moving in the area, and would there be a possibility that maybe the public information officer could kind of get on the campaign to help educate the public? That's just a thought and idea. And
I understand your point, because I see a lot of stuff on social media about even us here and the fact that we pass things that people don't like, and they don't understand that we have rules and regulations we have to go by. The Land Development Code and the comp plan, it's not whether we like a project or dislike a project. If it meets the comp plan, we're supposed to pass it. That's what our job is here. But a lot of people don't know that, and they think we're just anti-environment.
Right.
So, but I don't know the best way to handle that except maybe some kind of,
But we do have a county public information officer, and since we have the benefit of Mr. Jones being here, I wanted him to hear that so that maybe he could talk to the PIO. And he indicated with a nod that he would, so I'm going to leave it in Mr. Jones's hands.
okay. Can you fix this? We'll expect results by the next meeting. So.
That's right.
Okay. And the last item that's not on the agenda, this is the last, is one of the things that if I'm asked to do something, which I did volunteer, when I was asked to do it, I considered it an honor, and that's why I'm trying to learn as much as I can about it. And I talk to employees, and I'm trying to and I observe. And sometimes somebody from the outside looking in can see ways to improve or enhance an operation. And one of the things is there's an observation that could possibly be a morale issue, and that there's, this department, this planning department, is so complex and is inundated every day with more development and more development and more development, and being put under the pressure and under the gun to do more with less, and they're doing the best they can. And if it wasn't for the what's the title, the planning manager, I believe Matt Carpenter would not be able to pull this. And I got a lot of faith in you, and you're doing an outstanding job, Mr. Carpenter. But you and your planning manager, it takes both y'all to do this, and y'all are working as hard as you can every day. And I've seen it. And when you're not here, she's the planning director. And when she's not here, you're the planning director and the planning manager. And y'all are working together, and both of you have your shoulder to the grindstone, and you're working together every day to make the impossible happen. And I'm wondering if it would be a fair suggestion to offer parity or equal compensation between the planning manager and the planning director, and put them on an equal scale financially, since they're both essentially doing the same job. And he is the planning director in the planning director's absence, and he's the planning manager in the planning manager's absence, and their salary is public record, and there's only $10,000 that separate the two. And after taxes, that would probably be approximately maybe $500 a month more for the planning manager, which isn't much, but it would be a little bit, as we say in the blue collar community, every little bit helps. Every little bit helps. So I think that would also help with morale a little bit. When everybody else goes home at 5 o'clock, there are many times when the planning manager goes to a workshop. He goes to a workshop up in Phoenix Springs to talk about the agriculture issues for farmers. When that's over at 10 o'clock at night, it's at least 11 before she gets home at night in Niceville. And that's just another day at work. So I'm wondering if it would be fair and maybe help the morale of the planning manager just a little bit, to have equal compensation monetarily for both positions.
I think that's a BCC.
Well, actually, I
Question.
ran this by Mr. Jones earlier, and he would like to weigh in on it. If this came full tilt, and they were put on parity, or they were on the verge of being put on parity, is that something you could support, Mr. Carpenter?
Because no, I'm going to be quite frank with you and very direct. I have never asked for $1 beyond what I was offered when I was hired 4 years ago. I have, on many occasions, asked for raises for my staff, and I will continue to advocate for more compensation for everybody that works in my department. Yes, sir. I'm in favor of all of my staff having more compensation. I don't think that's appropriate for me to discuss, but I want her to have every dollar that she can get because I absolutely support that she earns it. Yes, sir.
Just so that everybody knows, a little something about, planning management. One of the reasons I'm an advocate for her is because when she was a young lady, fresh out of college, 4-year degree in planning. Soon after that, she got a master's degree in planning. She's, worked in private industry for one of the most progressive developing companies in America, the Windswept Phase company. She was instrumental in designing the neighborhood I lived in for 20 years, St. Joe Development in Tallahassee. Very similar to watercolor. Did an outstanding job. And the only reason that we have the benefit of all of her knowledge and training, spent her life learning about engineering matters, everything encompassing planning, is because her husband, who is an aviator, assigned to Wilbur Field, he happened to land here in Walton County, and we got the benefit of all of her combined knowledge, and she brings an awful lot to the table, and I think she's undercompensated for what she does. So there's nothing I can do about it. I'm just trying to educate everybody and put some thoughts on the table. That's it.
All right, thank you. Well, I think Mr. Jones said they're gonna look at it and come back with, be a recommendation made to the county commissioners as to what to do on that. And, so that it's beyond our pay scale, of course. So, is that it?
Yes.
All right, we're adjourned.
Educate me.
Thank you.
Tell me why the mileage thing